I stumbled across Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson the same way people stumble across cults, conspiracies, and cocaine habits. By accident, and then compulsively, obsessively, like it was a message encoded specifically for my system. The subtitle might as well have been "Read this if you want to reprogram your nervous system." Which of course I do. This isn't just a book. It's a bootleg manual for rewiring your consciousness. It's a fuse you light, and then hope you survive the detonation. And what detonates first is the model he opens with: the thinker and the prover. The thinker is the part of your brain that generates beliefs. It's the mythmaker, the part of you that says the world is flat or I am ugly. The prover is the silent accountant. Its job is to take whatever the thinker believes and go out into the world to collect evidence. You think you're unlovable? The prover presents a catalog of rejections you didn't even notice when you were confident. The thinker believes, the prover proves. That's the loop. That's the architecture of the prison you don't even know you're in. Wilson kicks this off with the turtles all the way down anecdote. An old woman tells the philosopher William James that the earth sits on the back of a giant turtle. "And what does that turtle sit on?" he asks. "Another turtle," she says. And so on forever. We laugh, but Wilson asks, is that any more stupid than thinking the universe came from nothing, exploded, and started a stock market? The point isn't who's right. The point is we're all standing on turtles, and every last one of them is hallucinated. And here's the punchline. The mistake isn't that you believe things. The mistake is that you don't realize you're the one writing the script, and the prover is just your overpaid hype man. Let's start deconstructing this prison. The first wall to come down is the lie of objectivity, especially the myth of the rational scientist. Wilson takes a brutal swipe at this, not because science is bad, but because scientists are just people with clipboards and egos. Think about it. Galileo was rejected by his scientific peers as well as the church. Einstein was mocked before he was worshipped. And even Einstein couldn't let go of his own bias long enough to accept quantum mechanics. Scientists are only scientific when they stick to method. The rest of the time, they're meatbags with insecurities and tribal loyalty to their academic departments. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not like that, congratulations. That's your thinker talking. Let's rip the veil off. You're doing this right now. Whatever you believe about yourself, you're proving it. If you believe you're special, you see signs from the universe. If you believe you're broken, you notice every moment that confirms it. That's the punchline. It's not just that this model explains weirdos and zealots. It explains. The second wall is the idea of a fixed, stable self. Wilson asks us to see the brain as a computer, not literally, but as a dangerously useful lie. Why? Because it takes in data from the world, interprets it through filters, language, culture, trauma, and then spits out a worldview. That worldview for you is reality. Except it's not. It's a VR headset you forgot you were wearing. And this isn't a machine of steel and silicon. It's built from colloids suspended in electrochemical goo. It's a wet, shimmering field of probability states where stress, trauma, orgasms, LSD, poetry, even television can shift the balance. A speech can harden it into a solid gel. A kiss can soften it into a liquid soul. The brain isn't a dry computer. It's a storm. In fact, you are always tripping. That's the line that pulls the floorboards out from under the house of logic. All experience is psychedelic, Wilson says. Not just the shaman with a mouthful of vines, but you, right now. Everything you perceive has already been filtered, colored, and adjusted by invisible neural processes before it even reaches your awareness. Psychedelics just make the controls visible. Without them, the whole machine is hidden behind a wall of assumptions you mistake for the world. The distinction between hardware and software isn't philosophical. It's operational. The hardware is your wetware, the meat, the neurons. But what makes you? You is not in the hardware. It's in the code. And here's the trick, it all feels like hardware. You say, I'm shy, or I'm a jealous person. And it feels like a fact, but it's not. It's a line of code that got installed somewhere between first grade and your last bad relationship. Wilson identifies 4 types of this software. First, the genetic imperatives, your hardwired instincts. No choice there. You're stuck with the lizard code. Then imprinting. These are one-shot, high-intensity experiences that carve permanent channels in your brain. A dog bite, your first orgasm, the day you learned death was real. Third is conditioning, the slow, Pavlovian drip of reward and punishment. Most of school, most of religion, most of office culture runs on this. And finally, there's learning, the softest and most flexible code, the door out of the maze. But most of what you call your personality isn't learning. It's just imprints and conditioning wearing a clever disguise. This entire collection of scripts creates what Wilson calls a reality tunnel. So, you don't have beliefs. You have a UI. You don't live in the world. You live in an interface layered over the world, customized by your cultural onboarding, trauma history, and cognitive habits. Now let's take a tour of the prison you call your personality. Wilson maps it out in circuits. These are the layers of your programming, installed before you could even say no. The first circuit boots up the moment you exit the womb. It's a prehistoric operating system written in 2 commands: safe or unsafe. Is there warmth? Is there milk? This isn't thought. It's the mammalian calculus of survival. If the infant finds warmth and consistency, the imprint registers the universe as friendly. If not, the imprint registers the universe as hostile or unpredictable. And that first switch, once flipped, sets the emotional tone for a lifetime. That's the horror of this circuit. It masquerades. It whispers through habits. If you flinch from touch, if you can't relax without control, if affection feels like a setup for betrayal, odds are your first imprint was scrambled. People with insecure first imprints crave strong external structures. Dictators, cults, rigid ideologies. Not because they're stupid, but because they're scared. The paranoid circuitry imprinted at the breast echoes outward into history. What happens when you never got that comfort, but still crave it? You find substitutes. Cigarettes, food, heroin, constant scrolling. Addiction isn't weakness. It's the nervous system self-medicating the unhealed wound of abandonment. The moment the baby crawls away from safety, the second circuit lights up. The first circuit asked, "Am I safe?" This one asks, "Whose territory is this?" It's about space, control, boundaries, ego. And it often begins with toilet training, the first major confrontation between personal autonomy and societal expectation. Your body is not entirely yours. You must control it. This tiny negotiation becomes a lifelong metaphor for how you handle power. Think back to the first time you won a fight or lost one. Those moments imprint deeply into this circuit. The results aren't just memories, they're scripts. A middle manager shouting at interns is often just a child trying to reclaim a stolen toy. And these scripts scale up. National politics is second circuit behavior in full regalia. Watch a presidential debate and ignore the words. Just observe the posturing, the interruptions, the dominance gestures. Wilson calls war toilet training with guns. It's not a joke, it's a neural fact. You're not trying to reason with an ideology. You're trying to reason with a watchdog growling because it smells a rival's piss on the fence. The moment a human starts using symbols consciously, the third circuit activates. It's about abstraction, names, syntax. Language doesn't describe reality. It slices it up and repackages it. This is what the semanticist Alfred Korzybski warned of with his famous phrase. The map is not the territory. The word tree is not a tree. But we forget this. We slaughter each other over words, freedom, justice, evil, as if the words themselves were the real thing. This is the trapdoor. Language liberates, but it also enslaves. Once you name something, you fix it in your perception. You reduce the infinite to the describable. Concepts become cages. Bureaucracies bloom from this symbolic rigidity. A judge can send you to prison because of a legal technicality. Language, once fluid, is hardened into code. The bureaucratic mind no longer asks, "What happened?" It asks, "What does the protocol say?" Intellectuals often drown in this circuit, mistaking semantic complexity for insight, building skyscrapers of language with no ground floor. Puberty flips a switch, and the fourth circuit boots up. This is where your nervous system shakes hands with the social template it was born into. Morality doesn't descend from principles, it's enforced by crowds. Peer approval is the primitive neurochemical signal that makes tribal living possible. Your idea of right and wrong is deeply wired into your desire to belong, not your intellectual commitments. Sexuality, far from being natural, is a swamp of cultural hallucinations. Your erotic template is not sacred. It's software, sculpted by exposure, shame, praise, and story. Pornography doesn't just titillate, it programs. Religion doesn't just repress, it brands the libido with guilt. You are not straight or kinky or vanilla by nature. You are an imprint pattern caught in a symbolic web. The culture wars are not philosophical. they're neurological. What looks like debate is usually imprint conflict. When someone argues about gender, what they're really defending is their Fourth Circuit blueprint. They're not about facts. They're about nervous systems reacting to perceived social survival threats. And this is the moment, if you've been paying attention, when this all flips from theory to confrontation. It's the moment you realize there is no grown-up, no central authority, no administrator behind the curtain. It's just you and your code. You are not choosing your worldview. You're playing back an echo. You are a patchwork of ancestral code and institutional suggestion, glued together by memory and defended by habit. And that can be terrifying. But it's also your liberation notice. Because once you see the script, you can start rewriting it. The choice is no longer whether you were programmed. The choice is whether you will take back the editor's seat. Wilson doesn't give you a key. He hands you a flashlight and tells you to find the hinges. The door's been there the whole time. So, here we are at the edge of the first half of the labyrinth. We've followed the circuits from the suckling infant to the code-drenched primate, mapping how your nervous system got hijacked before you could spell your own name. But this is where we pause. Not because the journey is over, but because the terrain ahead is about to tilt again. The next phase takes us beyond the social circuits and into the strange realms of ecstasy, intuition, and evolution. We'll dive into circuits 5 through 8, the hidden systems most people never even activate. It gets weirder. It gets lighter. It gets dangerous in all the good ways. So subscribe, because part 2 is coming. And it's not just more information. It's the key to bending the software of your own mind towards something wilder than belief: freedom.